Welcome to the Storytime Adventures for Adults video series. Today we'll be reading Part 1, 800 BCE, pages 58 through 61 from Songs from the Depths by Meg Swanson. And yet Amphitrite dropped her staff and let Agalope fall back into the water. The sea is unusually calm today. It would be a shame if the weather were to turn suddenly. Agalope grimaced. So you're going to let the sea take care of me then, instead of killing me yourself? Amphitrite rubbed her temples. Hear me, child. The fates, or someone, have sent you to me instead of to Poseidon. Your life is in my hands. And even though the news of you and your sister's plot, and eventual failure of said plot, did reach me here in the depths, I find that I feel empathetic to your current plight. So I say again, it would be a shame if the weather were to turn and you slipped through my fingers. Agalope's face turned hopeful as she bobbed in the water, but then she frowned. What would I owe you in return? That is the question, isn't it? Amphitrite slowly rotated her staff in her fingers. The fish that were suspended between its two tines glistened in the sun. Really, I suppose it will depend on what I learn from your sisters. You might not owe me anything, but if I discover that this has all been a ruse and you played on my sympathies, I will find you, and your punishment will not be swift. Amphitrite leaned down and pulled feathers from Agalope's arm. I'll need these. Proof. You understand. Agalope nodded, but found she didn't actually understand. Now go. Amphitrite raised her staff, and a strong wind blew the queen's hair back from her face as the sky darkened. Agalope was lifted in the stormy seas and whisked off for lands unknown. Ribs expand, pain sears, my physical reminder of the cost. Amphitrite watched Agalope be taken off and said a small prayer for her. Once Agalope was out of sight, Amphitrite sighed heavily. She loved the sea, but the arrangement with her husband often left her out of the important dealings. When Hades was able to steal Persephone because of the siren sisters' lackadaisical guarding of her, Poseidon had ridden a hurricane to Olympus to weigh in on the punishment, leaving Amphitrite to wonder at the details of what actually happened. Poseidon had been gone for days, and when he returned, he brought the storm with him. Those women! They dared to remain silent when faced with us. Well, they have their just desserts now. Let's see if they get any meals any time soon. Ugh! I told Demeter that she never should have trusted them. But no, because who better to protect her beloved daughter than, he sneered, man-eaters? Well, obviously she was wrong. Amphitrite had sat quietly while her husband continued to storm around. There was nothing to say when he was in these moods. Poseidon finally stopped in front of his wife and fell to his knees. She wrapped him in her tentacles and placed her hands on either side of his face. You've had a rough few days. I wish I could have been there to help. Poseidon yanked his face away, his barnacled beard scraping her hands. Do you think I would ever let you up there with them? All their politics and collusion. No, I have to keep you safe, here with me. Amphitrite looked down at her hands. She knew that Poseidon believed he was protecting her. But she also knew that if she were allowed up there, her darling husband would have to explain his own collusion to her. She sighed, and little bubbles escaped her gills. Of course, how silly of me. As time passed, Amphitrite got bits and pieces of what happened from lesser water goddesses and sea nymphs, and because it was her duty, she had sided with her husband and their family. Now, though, as she tightly clutched the bloody feathers in her fist, Amphitrite wondered at her defiance. What had made her go to the surface? What would she tell Poseidon? Nothing. He needs only to know what his siblings tell him. With a flick of her staff, the gray sky turned sickly green. Wind and waves kicked up, and Amphitrite turned her face into the pelting rain. She sank back down into the water, and her tentacles pushed her through the storm toward Siren Rock. The water carries me to the unknown, and still I pray for death. Amphitrite landed hard on the rocky shore and looked around. Even in the rain, she could tell that this was a prison. "Sirens!" she shouted into the rain. There was no answer. "Blast this storm!" she yelled, conveniently forgetting that she had created it in the first place. She stabbed her scepter into the rocks, and light speared out of the pearl at its center. "Sirens, come forth!" From a cave emerged two women, identical to the one Amphitrite had just sent into the storm. The only telling differences were their wings and the blood on their hands. "Why have you come here?" the one with raven wings asked. Amphitrite's seaweed brow rose. "My, aren't we impudent?" The other spoke up. "I'm sorry, my lady. My sister forgets herself." P.C. Nai elbowed her sister. "What brings you, Queen of the Sea, to our humble island?" Amphitrite held out a fistful of wet feathers. "I have some questions." This was Part 1, 800 BCE, pages 58 to 61 from Songs from the Desk by Meg Swanson. On July 1st, we will continue reading from Part 1. If you can't wait until then to hear how the story goes, feel free to purchase the book at www.megswanson.me. Next week, we will read the final chapter in Humanity's Evolution, which is Part 23. Starting this month, visit www.reneeannhughes.com to enter our free raffle to win one of 4 prizes. All you have to do is submit your email address by June 30th for a chance to win. If you would like to contribute to these series, please feel free to become a patron on Patreon. Details for joining are on my website, and also please subscribe to this YouTube channel so you won't miss any new videos. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.